Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Many of us, as we go to sleep at night, tend to dream. Sometimes when we get into conversations with other people, we realize, well, the dreaming world for most people seems to be pretty linear. You go to sleep, you might have a dream, you might even remember what goes on in a dream. And occasionally you might run into someone who says, well, I actually dream, but I don't really dream in color. Then you start hearing more and more as people begin to become more inquisitive if you become someone who dreams more regularly, saying, well, you know, I actually not only dream in color, but I've actually been able to reach states known as the lucid state. That is, where we become consciously awake during our dreams and even perhaps controlling the outcomes of what happens. Then there are those who talk about nightmares. How do we overcome nightmares? What are those all about? The dreaming world just holds a fascinating array of questions and unsolvable answers that could be solvable if we just practice and work at it. On the Beyond 50 radio program today, we're going to be talking with author of the book, Dreaming with Polar Bears. Now, there's something worth dreaming about. Anybody ever dream about a polar bear before? Perhaps they might think of it as a nightmare more than anything else. But over the years, our guest has become an animal communicator who dreamed of polar bears, and that triggered the realization that not only was she dreaming of a living polar bear, but that the polar bear was dreaming of her as well. Through this shared dream encounter, she became adept at connecting with the bear both while asleep and awake. And together they explored non-physical locales where lucid dreamers meet to join the consciousness and co-dream together. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program our guest, Dawn Bauman-Brunke, joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program. Dawn, how are you?
Hi, I'm very good. Thanks for having me on your show.
Now, you know, when it comes to dreams and bears, I remember that there was a series of dreams that I had, and this was probably back in the early part of the 1990s, where it was about a grizzly bear, actually, that I would never see, but I could sense the danger. It was deep in the bush on a mountainside somewhere, you know, and pretty terrifying stuff. But here you actually had sort of the same thing with a polar bear, but it started out as a dog. Tell us how this all began for you.
Well, it is a long story, kind of a number of dreams that triggered other dreams, and it's kind of a bit of a shaggy dog story, if you will, of how this all began. But basically, I had a dream while I was on a ship with my sister, and it was a lucid dream in which I was aware that I was dreaming, and I was aware of two different basically screens of consciousness. In other words, I knew I was on the ship dreaming. I could sense my body there, but I also sensed a dog. It was a little dog. And I was able to shift my consciousness into the dog and know all about his life. And it was kind of an involved dream, and I learned about his life, and I was able to kind of go back and forth and see myself both sleeping and shift into this consciousness. And it was incredibly fascinating to me, the way that, you know, not only to be lucid in a dream, and I had lucid experiences in dreams before, but just this ability to shift in consciousness within a dream into two different states of awareness. I had never experienced anything like that before. So that was a dream very significant for me, and it triggered a dream later, about a year later, in which I also woke up in a dream. I became lucid. I happened to be on an airplane in the dream, and a man was sitting in the seat kind of next to me. There were three seats. I was by the window. He was in the aisle, and he told me he was a professor of dreamology. And at one part, we began talking in the dream, and at one point in the dream, I looked out the window, and I saw these early morning pink clouds. In the dream, it was early morning. It was a flight from Juneau to Anchorage, which I've actually been on before, and it was very dark. And then as the flight went on, I saw these incredible pink golden clouds outside the window. And I had this, kind of one of those weird thoughts that triggers something inside of you. And I thought, isn't it strange that, outside on this side, here are these amazing clouds that are bright. And really, if I kind of just let go, I could, see what it would be like to be a cloud or become a cloud. And yet on the other side of this awareness, in this airplane, people are sleeping and it's kind of dark, and that triggered the remembrance in that dream of the other dream, of the dog dream. And I suddenly became aware, oh, there are two screens of awareness here, and I can shift between them. I can look at the clouds, or I can come back into this plane. And that triggered another kind of a lucid awareness of this dream, and I began telling the professor about this dream. And long story short, because it was kind of a long, involved dream, he kind of pressed me, well, what about this dog? Was he real? And we went back and forth. And at the end of the dream, the significant ending part of the dream was that we were standing, the plane had landed, and how you stand, you gather all your things. And he offered me an invitation. It was a piece of paper, really nice, elegant card. And I realized that this was an invitation that I could accept or not. There were kind of no karma consequences, if you will. It was just free for me to take if I wanted. And when I opened the card, he leaned closer to my ear and he whispered what was written on the card, which was dreaming with polar bear. Mm-hmm. So for me, this evolution of dreaming and this invitation to dream with polar bears, and at that time I wasn't really sure what that meant. What does that mean to dream with polar bears? It's not dreaming about polar bears, but dreaming with polar bears. So it indicated some kind of a co-dreaming, a co-awareness, an adventure with polar bears. And that was something that then, triggered this next phase into my life of actually dreaming with polar bears. Having lucid dream encounters with polar bears. And again, this was a gradual process. It wasn't something that happened 1, 2, 3. There were a number of years involved. And it also involved me going back into dream journals. I've been a big dreamer for all of my life, really. So I went back to my dream journals that I've kept since I was about 12 years old. And I started finding a number of dreams about bears. Mm-hmm. Not only polar bears, but also black bears and brown bears. And so I got to do kind of a little dream research history into my own evolution of dreams, and that all connected as well. So in other words, there's a lot of threads there that all came together, and that required, a certain state of consciousness to bring them together and to become more aware of what that aspect of dreaming was all about.
Mm-hmm. Now, I just want to go ahead and clue our listeners in here about you, Don, and that is this. I've had certainly a lot of guests over the years that would, let's say, teeter on or be deeply enmeshed in what is known as a New Age movement or New Age conscious thought. And I want to clearly let our listeners know that as you read Dreaming with Polar Bears, this is not what you're going to get from this book. There is a very lucid, real quality to what you have written here that, A, tells me you have been a dreamer for many, many years. One recognizes the other pretty easily through the writing and the expression of the language and the story that you share within the chapters here. But most importantly, it also shows as we all get caught up in the idea of physics talking about energy and we're all interconnected, so forth and so on. Humans, even though they might read about this or they might go and see a movie or get involved in lively discussions about how energy is just energy, just expressing itself in different ways, we're all interconnected, deeply we still feel this sense of being disconnected, being separated. And I think what's really wonderful about what you've written here is it shows if you could reach this level, you'll realize, A, fear disappears. There's no reason for it, because it is absolutely true that energy only manifests itself in different expressions, and that we are all interconnected, and knowing that, there really is nothing to fear, is there?
Well, I think that's a good philosophy to have, I think that's true on certain levels. And I think also because we are, in physical bodies, we do have fears from time to time. So I think it's important to also acknowledge those feelings as well. In other words, I guess I'm saying both and, and if you can live your life from that point of view of no fear, that's wonderful. If you can't, I think, I think we need to acknowledge our fears. Our fears are help us survive. So, there's a number of levels there of consciousness, And part of what I'm interested is bridging those. Bridging numerous worlds, numerous aspects of reality, and kind of becoming more fluid with how we access those. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, okay.
Well, see, what I meant by that wasn't to be philosophical, but we tend to have fear of what we don't understand. There's the reasonable survival fear. You know, you see a rattlesnake or a king cobra. Smart money says you're better just walking away from it, but if you can get away just enough and observe the animal, you'll begin to see something very, very fascinating. You know, that maybe it wants to connect once it feels, hey, okay, well, we see that we're not food for each other or you know, enemies of each other. Let's come to understand each other, you know, sort of a thing. Now, a polar bear, for instance, isn't somebody you walk up and invite out for a beer, for instance. But, you know, they're certainly reasonably, extremely, you know, intelligent animals, very loving parents, you know, and it goes on and on and on, but you think bear, you think fear when you think about, you know, the movies when it comes to things like that. But yet, here is an animal that has been respected deeply by the Inuit, you know, that you look at indigenous cultures and you think of animal totems, and the connections of the way these animals really try to bridge, and in the case for you, it was one particular bridge known as Bering Strait, which we'll get into in a minute, but that we can actually learn to see the world through their eyes so we can begin to respect not only the world we live in, but ourselves as well.
Right, exactly. I think that's a very important observation. And I think part of what I did learn was through this, well, and with my past experience as well, is that when you start to shift and to see and to recognize that the human way of seeing the world is one way of seeing the world. It's not necessarily, you know, it's our way of seeing the world. But that doesn't mean that there aren't many other different ways of seeing the world. And I've always been interested in kind of this idea of shape-shifting, of shifting the shape of our consciousness, shifting our vision and our experiences so we can know what the world is from other points of view. And I think once you do that, number one, you're kind of blown away of like, whoa, this is not the only reality. And then number two, I think you start to see that there are, as you alluded to so much, there's this network of connection between all beings. It's this tapestry that's been woven on planet Earth, and it's so amazing. So yes.
Mm-hmm. Now tell us about Bering Strait.
Well, I want to just go back a moment too and just thank you for saying, you know, when you read the book, all of this kind of makes sense. It's step by step. I've been doing a lot of radio shows, and to just jump in and say, you know, talking about, yeah, I had these dreams with polar bears. It sounds a little disconnected and crazy, but this really did evolve through a lot of dreaming and a lot of work with animals that I've done. What basically happened is I started to have these dreams of walking beside a polar bear in the Arctic. They're very, very short dreams, and I dreamed these dreams for about a year. That was after I got that invitation to dream with polar bears. And there was a growing awareness within the dream. And I was walking beside this one bear, and I felt I had a relationship with the bear in some way. It was, you know, not through words, and just a feeling. And it was a feeding feeling because it was such a quick dream. After about a year, I woke up inside of that dream, and I did connect with that bear. And I really longed to learn more about him. And kind of what happened then when I opened up to that lucid awareness is I basically started connecting with groups of bears, kind of, you might call them spirit bears, you know, a group of animal teachers, animal spirits. And so there was a bunch of education kind of that went on there. And then I kept wanting to know, who was that bear in the dream before, you know, that one bear? And in a very creative dream, that bear appeared and began connecting with me and kind of said, you know, humans, this is a loose translation, of course, but humans like names. You know, they like to work with names. So my name is Bering Strait, and so that was my bear partner that I dreamed about and that I connected with, and it was an interesting name, huh? You know, the Bering Strait is
right.
You know,
I was going to jump on the bridge reference you made earlier, but I thought I would just hold on.
Yeah, it has a lot of multiple meanings. So anyway, that was the bear relation, the name of the bear that I mostly connected with in the dreams and experienced both lucid dreaming as well as shared dreaming, which is, as you mentioned before, kind of this notion of I'm awake in my dreams and this other being is awake in the dreams, and somehow we're connecting. and dreaming together, which is really exciting dream territory, I think.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's fascinating because as you're having these lucid dreams again, I love, as Don Juan states, that it's a separate reality. And anybody who's dreamed and had nightmares, for instance, you feel, or your body really feels, a physiological fear of what's going on. Just as much as when you're having a dream full of laughter and excitement, your body physiologically feels that. So it must be a separate reality, but it must be, exciting to be able to be in a dream where you have this dream again with this Bering Strait, this polar bear, and again and again. Very few people have the opportunity to be able to go back and dream the same thing again, even though it changes, and then it becomes a series of basically dialogues between you and this wonderful animal.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, and again, I do think we're all capable of that. I think it's, I just had some, I've worked with my dreams for a very long time, decades, and I've just always been really fascinating by dreams. So I think it's like anything, you put your awareness, where you put your awareness and your focus is kind of where, after a while, the richness starts to come out. You deepen into that. So, on the one hand, I don't think it's anything necessarily magical that I achieved, but I think it's something that we can all open to. It's a matter of, where is your focus and are you interested in that sort of thing? Yeah, because I think one message that I will just say to your listeners that comes across from animals in general is that they really would like more relationships like this. And, there's certain animals that are their expertise in their medicine or their teaching happens to be with dreaming, like the bears. The bear family tends to be very focused on dreaming. And so this is something that's open to others as well.
Now, he was also part of a council of bears. Tell us about that.
Well, they talked about the council of bears, and again, this is a human word,
right.
And they use different words, but basically, it's a coalition of consciousness. It's a grouping of bear energy focus, and there's a lot of layers to this. But one of the points on their agenda is to help both polar bears deepen their dreaming as well as humans. And this goes back to the history, as they told me, between the early Arctic peoples, humans, and bears, and that there was a much more close relationship there, where humans did honor these animals. When they ate them, they honored their skulls, their fur, and the bears honored the humans in ways with dreaming and with, certain healing connections. So there was a whole different consciousness way back when between humans and bears. And I forgot where I started now. What I was going to say with this.
Well, sometimes when you're in that Arctic region there, you need to be able to get back into your lack of polarization and stay focused, right?
Yeah, definitely. Although polar bears, I would say they're great at wandering, and
right.
They find things of interest, and then all of a sudden, and I think this comes through in my book a little bit. Sometimes you
and it's coming through in our conversation as well.
yeah, and then you focus on another, and it just takes you to a different place.
It's what is known as a flow, folks. F-L-O-E, flow.
Right, there you go.
So, what was fascinating, too, is that as I was reading in one particular chapter how it was shared with you in human terms that and I'm going to kind of speak, from the perspective of Bering Strait, is that, we carry a lot of energy, magnetic energy. We actually kind of keep the poles in line, hence, polar opposites, that sort of a thing. Describe that for us a little bit.
Well, yeah, and this is something other polar bears have mentioned, and actually another communicator way back when had told me about this, that polar bears, they do have a different connection with the world because they live at the top of the world, and the magnetic energy is, stronger there. And there's a sense, the polar bears, to me, they often spoke about bridging. So about bridging the sky with the land with the ice and the sea. And oftentimes I would get this visual kind of a network, and the network would be coming from the north of the pole and of kind of going around the earth and coating it a little bit of an aura-like, or a net, a web, a network that kind of holds things together. And this gets a little arcane, but it has to do with energetics and our connection with off-world energies as well, something that the whales will also refer to, and just this net of connection that we have. And it's interesting because the polar bears are focused on the magnetics of it, whereas other animals are focused more on the electrical aspect of it. And, there's just different layers, and kind of what we talked about before, there's different ways of seeing the world. So the way that we see it isn't necessarily the only way. And once you start tuning in and seeing these networks of energies, of, magnetic flow and so on, I think you get a much larger view of the world, much larger view of our planet, for sure.
What were some other things as you were having these series of dreams that really fascinated you from the perspective of polar bears?
Well, I'm really kinesthetic in my world. I like to feel things. And one thing that I got to do in the dreams, which I just loved, was to feel from the perspective of the polar bear sometime. And I did have this really wonderful dream where it started out kind of funny and a little creative, where I put on this costume for a polar bear and a kind of big bobblehead. And there was a marvelous experience where I felt my body kind of expanding to fit that costume, and the costume becoming tighter on my body and becoming one, and there was a fusion there. And I suddenly became, in the dream, a polar bear. And I could, it was just a totally different perspective of how we imagine polar bear life to be, or what it's like to be a polar bear. And suddenly feeling that, the movement within the body, of how they move, of how they shake. And I remember there was this one aspect which I really loved, which was the paws. I could feel from my paws under the earth, about 3 to 4 inches below the earth. And I understood what that magnetic connection was. It was something very palpable. It was an energy that was easily felt. Just like, I don't know, if you do body work or something. In fact, in my early days, I did a lot of massage work. And so when you're doing massage work and you're really focusing on muscles, you can allow your touch to really kind of penetrate the muscles, and you're feeling at a different level. And in some ways, that's what this was like. It was feeling beneath the surface of the earth and feeling some of the energies that are connecting us to the earth and interacting between polar bear paws and the earth. So it was just fascinating.
And what was interesting, and I'm pretty sure about this, is that the italicized parts of your book are parts of your dream journal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the italicized parts were basically the animal voice.
Okay, great. Because when you talk about having these polar bear paws and feeling like you're really connecting deep into the earth, it was said to you that it was also a way they get in touch with what are known as deep people. Tell us about that.
Well, again, it was their recognition of another form of consciousness beneath the earth. And so there's kind of a couple different aspects there, but one that they would talk about is the deep sea people. And so that would be almost like a group consciousness of animals that live underneath the sea. So it would be whales and seals and octopus, things like that. So it would be kind of a connection there. And then deeper still, there's an energetic of deep sea energy that these bears can tune into, and other animals can too. It's not just polar bears. But so different layers of energy, and even deeper still into the earth, beneath the sea, kind of a magnetic earth pulse resonance, if you will. And if you attune your consciousness that way, you can connect with that and begin to understand what that is and how all of these energies are supporting our earth. And we're not always aware of that.
And it seems, I'm sure, that as you've been on various radio shows and done various interviews, that people might take a perception that, well, this sounds like, okay, here's the call to environmentalism again, that we need to start being more responsible for what we're doing to this planet. And certainly that is there, but anybody who will read Dreaming with Polar Bears will realize, no, there's a much deeper message to this than that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think that is all important, and we do need a clean environment and a healthy environment. But I think the deep message that the polar bears are conveying is to wake up. For us really to be responsible to ourselves, to our authentic selves, Mm-hmm. We live in a world of incredible diversions right now, and media, free for all, and we often get lost in the surface details of things. And I think what so many animals on the planet are saying is kind of nudging us, encouraging us to come back to our deep self, the self that does know, and the self that is connected with the earth and with all other beings. And when we act from that self, we don't do things that are dangerous or upsetting to the earth, Mm-hmm. And that's the way change happens. That's the way most animals explain to me. That's the way change happens on the earth. It's not by enacting all these laws or doing this, that, or the other, or making group against group. It's about coming home to who we really are, mm-hmm. and starting to resonate at that level with others, with ourselves, with our planet, with all beings.
Now, as people have talked with you about your book, what would you say has been sort of the more frustrating element of what they have talked with you about?
More frustrating? Huh. I don't know that I've been frustrated with anything. I guess my frustration is a little bit that it really is. It's a book that's meant to be read and it kind of guides you gently into this whole thing. So mm-hmm. sometimes when it's a very short interview and we're talking, there's a little bit of a disconnect there, mm-hmm. And I think I guess that's a little bit of a worry or frustration for me. But really, this was, my connection with the bears took place over so many years, and it really was not just for readers, but for myself, a sense of getting used to this. There was about a year where I just didn't even think I could write this book because I thought it was a little too crazy, So there's a sense of needing to be grounded with that information and needing to take it in at some of these deeper levels. And I think part of what the polar bears asked me personally was, can you be big enough to step into that? Can you get out of some of your self-doubts and some of your resistance to that and really open up in a larger way to a larger form of consciousness?
Well, Donna, we all remember the late Stephen Jobs, and there was that great commercial that he produced, and it had this statement that simply said, those of us who are crazy enough to think that we can change the world are the ones who usually do. Now, there was one particular dream, though. See, now, we're kind of taking the one side where, okay, come with me and let's see the world through the eyes of a polar bear, but at the same time, Bering Strait was willing to also enjoy your perspective as well, and there was one dream that surprised you were sharing in the book where it had a homey feel, where you were beginning to share things such as literature and mm-hmm. and what you were cooking, things like that. What was that like?
Well, I love that dream. It was just kind of this oddball dream where I wasn't lucid until midway through the dream, but in the beginning when
the bouillabaisse started boiling over, right?
Exactly. In the dream, I'm expecting this kind of, distinguished professor to show up, and he shows up, and he's wearing, this kind of a European look, this scarf and a fedora, and he comes in, and he says, "Hungry, hungry," and I'm serving soup, and he keeps being hungry, and I keep serving the soup, and I'm looking at him, and I'm realizing he has this white downy fur all around him. Yeah, it was a funny dream, and he got bigger and bigger the more soup he ate. And then eventually I realized who it is. I'm awake within the dream. And even though this isn't my house in the dream, it's kind of a little homey, cozy apartment, he starts asking about all these different things, candles and crystals. And we go into a little alcove, and he asks about photographs. There's these really pretty black and white photographs that were up. And I'm trying to explain I'm not really a good science person, so it has to do with light and and things like this. And I'm trying to explain it, and then he's fascinated by a phonograph that's playing some old kind of jazzy blues music, and I'm telling him, yeah, people recorded that music a long time ago, and then with plastic they were able to make these recordings. And then he asked about a book, and I'm explaining about how people share their thoughts in written type and how this might have been from a long time ago, but we can still read it now. And the more he's asking about these things, the more I'm thinking, wow, that's really amazing, that we can take these visual records of things from long ago and still see them now, or that we can make a recording of sounds and of music and bring that into the present now, and that we can do that with words and our thoughts and our ideas, and how so much has been passed on through the ages. It was just a different realization, something maybe I've taken for granted, or something maybe a lot of us take for granted. And when you step into the depths of that and see it new, with new eyes, it gave me a different perspective on things. So it was really a joy to share in that way, and through the sharing, to see things in a slightly deeper, different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, I can't encourage people enough. Just the imagination that you'll have as you read through Dreaming with Polar Bears is worth the read itself. But even deeper so, as I was stating earlier in the program, this isn't some New Age environmentalist fluff. This is some really interesting stuff that would encourage a lot of us, and I think, because I have also been a practitioner of lucid dreaming for many, many years, is that it's so worth doing because you begin to slow time down. You begin to slow life down, and you begin to smell the roses, if you will, and realize the most valuable thing that we have is our health and the time that we have while we're enjoying it, and to use that time with the kind of wisdom that we're endowed with being able to exercise and build on, and that certainly comes through here in this book.
Well, thank you. I like how you said that, too, because I very much agree with that. It's about being present and being more aware of who we really are. Yeah.
And there is so much more we can talk about this, but, we don't want to blow any surprises for anybody. And, well, unfortunately, radio does have a time limit. Is there a website people can find out more about this, Dawn?
Yeah, my website is animalvoices.net, and all of my books are listed there, as well as chapter excerpts from this book and information on how to order.
Very good. Dawn, thank you for being in the world and sharing this special gift, especially with our listeners, for being here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Thanks much.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in again. You can find out the book is Dreaming with Polar Bears, Spirit Journeys with Animal Guides. Find out what your totem might be. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.